I absolutely believe children can survive parents to separate. It's how that's managed that's key.
Yeah.
Not ignore the emotional aspects of divorce and separation, because that's not possible, but to refocus on the decisions and the process. I think people want peace.
At least they're empowered to be able to take control, make their own decisions and go at their pace.
People need to be able to come into mediation and use their own voice and have the power to do that.
It could be the first time they've ever done that.
And I think collaboration. There's not one kind of service that accommodates everybody's needs in divorce. And it's okay to reach out and collaborate. What mediation really helps is to explore options, be creative. What can this look like? One of the things I say a lot is if parents don't know, children don't know. And if children don't know, they make it up in their head. The emotional readiness is really important, and I do discuss that. And I ask clients sometimes, are you able to make these decisions?
Hi Sue, thank you so much for coming in today. For anyone who's watching, we're here just to discuss your brilliant role as a mediator locally in Leamington. If you want to just tell me a little bit about yourself.
I will. So I've been qualified as a mediator since 2019, which was quite interesting because shortly after qualification, COVID hit. So I then was at home in a bedroom learning my craft, which was very interesting and great. Before that, though, I think my focus on my career has always been with families in crisis, whether that's, support around parenting, behaviour management, anger management. So I think the skill set was there for me, working towards deciding what to do with my career as, later in life. And mediation just felt really natural to me. It just felt a very organic shift into mediation and to continuing to support families and advocate for children, really, which is something that I'm really passionate about.
Okay, that's really good to know for anyone who's watching.
Yeah, because I think ultimately, especially if children are involved in families that are separated and divorcing, we have to keep them focused and hold them in the centre of all the decisions that are being made. And that can be hard when emotions are involved for the adults.
And that's why somebody like a mediator is so important, because there's some parties who will just look at the finances, won't they, and think that's key.
Yeah.
And we've worked on cases recently where we've tried to bring it back to the child, and in law it states that the children's interests are paramount.
Yeah. I think even where child arrangements are agreed, which is common, I can meet people who come into mediation who don't need to discuss the children because they've managed that, which is brilliant. Even in financial decisions, children are part of that, and depending on the age of the children really does influence on what those decisions need to look like and what, and that can be a challenge when we're talking about separating finances. Because it might be unfair to say, but I think people's attitude can shift when we're separating as to what we should do with those finances.
It's easy to become quite greedy, isn't it, in that situation? Think, I'm homeless, what's going to happen? Think about yourself instead of everybody.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that I see often is the fear of the future. That is so apparent and absolutely understandable that people are scared of what the next step looks like, because you're now navigating life as a single income or a single person or not a single parent, because we should, always kind of approach things as a cooperative parenting role. But I think that you're entitled to be scared, because it's scary if you've lived in a household where there's two incomes, or even if there's one income but there's an agreement of how that works together. And I think what mediation helps people do is sit with that and say, okay, what do we need to look at here? What is the decision? And you'll know this, it's one of the things that is helpful for me as a mediator is the law. Because it's really clear what the law expects us to consider.
Yes.
And that helps me have a voice in mediation to say, actually, it's not me that's dictating this rule. The law states fairness, need, and child need, and we need to focus on that. And I think that can be really helpful for people.
And they're hearing it from somebody else. It's not hearing it from their soon-to-be ex.
Yeah.
It's actually
it lands so
person.
differently. I can say exactly the same thing as an ex-partner's saying, but it lands differently. But I think that's okay. That's helpful. I often say to people, I think mediation provides a breath of fresh air. It provides you with a space and an opportunity to pause and almost not ignore the emotional aspects of divorce and separation, because that's not possible, but to refocus on the decisions and the process. And I think people not only need that, but often welcome that, because actually when it boils down to it, I think people want peace. They want calm. They want to move forward. And yes, it's probably one of the most emotional challenges ever. But I think being in a space, whether it's with a solicitor, whether it's with a mediator or other professionals, where you've got a third voice in the conversation that just helps calm, guide, ask those relevant, really important, difficult questions is an extremely helpful process and needed for many.
Yes. And obviously we had Good Divorce Week last week.
We did.
It always makes me think, is there anything such as a good divorce?
Yeah.
What do you think makes a good divorce? I think it's sorting it out outside of court, personally. That's why I became a collaborative family solicitor.
Yes.
I think we should always be collaborating, whether it's through mediation or in other ways, working as a team to help this family. Yeah. What do you think of that?
I think it's a great thought, because I've had this conversation a lot, is what is a good divorce? Is there such a thing as a good divorce? And maybe there isn't. Is that a play on words? I think there can be a better way of divorcing, and I think collaboration, we don't have to, there's not one kind of service that accommodates everybody's needs in divorce, and it's okay to reach out and collaborate. I think that's really important. And I am always keen to do that as a mediator, is to bring other people into that space if it supports those two people that are navigating that process better. And often, financial advice, legal advice, get them in the room with us all, and we'll talk through that. But going back to what you said there, is what makes a good divorce. Some of the conversations I had last week were very much around setting intentions for me. At the beginning, when that decision's made of we're separating, we're divorcing, it's usually highly emotionally charged. Yeah. We do hear the stories of it's been a mutual decision, it's been calm, that's great. But generally it then follows on with a long list of decisions that need to be made, and all those emotions attached to that. And I think setting the attention at the beginning of what help is available, what support do we need, what do we need to know, how do we communicate this with each other and maintain some level of respect. And I know that's not easy. I mean, that's my magic wand wish list, because we're dealing with emotions and separate emotions. But I think, like I said earlier, when you step into a room with somebody else helps guide you through that of, yes, this is emotional, but practically these are the decisions that need to be made. And I think people welcome that.
So for everyone watching then, how does this process work from your perspective then, if somebody wants to go through mediation?
Well, if they've had legal advice, I would hope most solicitors talk to them about mediation, because solicitors I know support the work of mediation and want to collaborate on that. The first point for anyone is a MIAM, so an information and assessment meeting. And I think that is the key to the start of a healthy process. And don't get me wrong, mediation's not appropriate for everyone, and that's okay, and we may not be sure, so that'll be part of the conversation. But a MIAM for me is a space where, so how a MIAM works is it's one-to-one, so I will meet both people separately if they both agree, and that's really important, because we need to give people that space to speak freely, to make sure that we're safeguarding and we're screening to make sure it is an appropriate route. That is essential. People need to be able to come into mediation and use their own voice, and have the power to do that.
It could be the first time they've ever done that.
Absolutely, yeah, really? and that's scary.
Yeah,
and that's a space in a MIAM for me to give that reassurance that although I'm neutral, I am there to challenge if I need to, or guide or question things. So a MIAM's really important, not just for me as a mediator to know that mediation is suitable, to ask the questions of where are you, how are you entering into in this process, what decisions have you been making so far. So just for me to get a general sense, but more importantly for me, it's for that person to really, really understand what it is we're trying to do. And what we're trying to do, and you've said it already, is avoid court.
Yeah.
Because that's where I think court encourages conflict.
Yes.
It certainly costs a significant amount of money and time.
A lot more
and
mediation.
You're saying to somebody else, you don't know me, but can you please make all the decisions about my future?
Yeah.
Well, when do we ever do that in life? We don't.
True.
And don't get me wrong, sometimes court is the answer, and it's needed, and it should always be an option that's considered. But what we're trying to do in our roles is avoid that, and just where you're going to court with the decisions that you've made, so the court can consent that, especially around finances, because as we know, financial consent orders are key, and we need to keep spreading that word. MyAM for me is the key. It's pick up the phone, make an appointment. If you're not sure, that's okay. If you don't know what you're doing, that's okay. That's what a MyAM's for. It's a two-way approach. And I always say at the beginning of the MyAM, I want you to leave this appointment knowing what your option is here, knowing what you might need to do next, understanding the process. And then if you're looking around, shopping around for options, great, you've got some information and make an informed decision.
And then if they wanted to go ahead, would they contact you for a joint session? Yeah,
so what happens after a MyAM, if we both agree it's suitable, I then contact the other person. I don't do that before a MyAM. Some mediators do, and that's fine. I choose not to do that professionally because I think it's the screening part for me. Is this safe? Is this okay to contact the other person? So if there's an agreement to say yes, I will then send a letter. I invite the other person to contact us, have a conversation. We talk about the government voucher, which offers up to £500 for child arrangements and all issues mediation if children are involved. So it's really easy to get the voucher. And we encourage them to have a conversation, which is my favourite word, conversation. If they agree, they'll have their own MyAM because they, again, need that space, private space to talk. And it's that point, if everyone's in agreement, then we'll arrange a joint session. And that can be in person or online.
Okay. And then would you see some disclosure, financial disclosure, if you're sorting out the finances? Yeah,
so again, I have a slightly different approach to that. So depending on what they need from me. So for example, some people come to mediation right at the beginning of this. They don't know where to start. So we may do a financial planning session.
Okay.
I may say, okay, when we're all together, let's talk about what financial disclosure means.
Yeah.
Partly because they can both hear it at the same time, so then there's no lost in translation. But sometimes people need that structure. They need, that a whole kind of moment of these are the financial aspects we need to think about. This is the work that they've got to do to bring that information in.
Yeah.
Some people don't need that. Some people are a little bit further down the line, so I will send them a financial disclosure form. I always say it's not the prettiest form, don't worry about it, fill it in the best of your ability.
Yeah, it's quite daunting, isn't it?
It's very daunting, and it's private, and I think there's that kind of sense of, I'm sharing, our most, private information, but the law states we need full and frank disclosure, and we need to understand it. So
to get
often,
the best out of the process, you do. Some people won't even know what the other person's got, will they?
Absolutely. And I think that's important as well, because there are some relationships where one will lead on the financial discussions or financial decisions. Maybe one person holds the financial information and the other person doesn't. That's okay if that's been their agreement through their marriage. But it's full and frank disclosure, and everybody will know what those what that information is. And again, that's part of the MyAM for me, because I need to understand that people are going to do that.
Yeah.
Because if they don't, the mediation's not suitable. It needs to then be a different route. So often I will send out that information and ask for it back before the first joint session, which is really helpful because I'm then really in the room, being part of that conversation.
Yeah.
I can put those things together. I can identify the gaps already.
And the complexities, I suppose.
Yeah, and then I can go in and we can then create a situation where we're all talking openly about that and often one of my first questions is, what are you thinking? What thoughts have you had? Because they've had them. So let's talk about that. They've usually sometimes made some decisions. They may already live separately because, let's face it, when we separate, that's one of the things we want to do. But more and more, I don't know about you, but more and more people are remaining living in the same property.
Well, it's too expensive, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's hard to get rental properties. I don't know if you've heard that from other people. A lot of my clients are struggling to actually be accepted.
Yeah. Yeah.
If they're attached to a mortgage as well. I suppose the
So
agencies
complex.
are thinking about their outgoings, which is understandable.
Yeah.
But that is very difficult, and that creates a lot of emotions.
It does. And a lot of stress, because that's the reality. And unfortunately, the world we live in doesn't make it easy to separate financially.
No.
So it is complex, and it does take time, and these are huge decisions.
They are huge decisions, and a good thing about mediation, though, is that it's cutting that time, isn't it? And it's cutting the money.
Yes.
Probably, I would say, well, it's going to be at probably half the cost at least.
From
to
court,
sort it out in
I would
mediation
say,
rather than
even
correspondence.
less than that. I think, there's, with the voucher, that's, I know it doesn't pay for the whole of mediation, but it helps. But I think you're right. I think it cuts not only cost, I think time. I think what mediation really helps is to explore options. Be creative. What can this look like? And often people think we need to live separately, and that's true. But be creative. How can this, especially around children and child arrangements? There's no formula. There's no one route fixes all. Finances, yes, there is. I don't know if there's an official formula, but there's an official roadmap, if you like, of what we need to look at, and that helps because it adds structure. And I think sometimes when I meet people, it can feel chaotic and overwhelming.
Definitely.
And structure is so important.
There's so much going on. With the emotions and practical day-to-day, life carries on, doesn't it? As you're having to navigate through this horrible journey, as you're grieving.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the children are worried, where are they going to live?
Yeah.
They might be having therapy as well.
Yeah.
Then you'll have guilt put into it as a different emotion.
The list of emotions is endless, isn't it? And also I think often people are on different emotional, or at different emotional points.
Yes.
If one person's decided to end the marriage and the other person hasn't, they're at different emotional places, but we're asking them to make the same decisions.
Yeah.
And I often speak to people who, because emotional readiness is really important, and I do discuss that. And I ask clients sometimes, are you able to make these decisions? I think navigating a space where you're going to see your child less and sharing, I know sharing's an interesting word, but where children live between homes, that's new territory.
Yes.
That's a new thought process. That's it's frightening. It's scary. It might make you angry. It may cause a lot of things. And I think we need to give space for that and time for that.
Well, that's the good thing about mediation, though, because unlike letters that are constantly going back and forth, there are a few weeks, if not more, between the mediation sessions, aren't there?
Yeah.
It's just going to happen in the process as you're gathering more information.
Yeah.
And it gives everyone a bit of time just to kind of come down from that high.
Yeah.
And just take stock.
Yeah. And that, I think, is really powerful and really needed. And I think the other thing mediation does is give you space to, I had a session last week where we came up with a number of options, and it was almost like, we'll sit with that, go away and think about what we've discussed, seek advice, speak to your solicitor, speak to whoever's involved, and just see how you're going to navigate that. That's important. And I think sometimes people think two things about mediation, and maybe as solicitors, I think you're probably better to speak about it, is first thing is they think the mediator will make the decisions, and we don't.
No, we can't.
We guide, we support. I sometimes do put things on the table that may not have been discussed, or play devil's advocate. And sometimes people think they've got to make a decision there and then. Absolutely not.
And
these are life-changing decisions.
Isn't it?
Take your time.
Yeah.
And I think if people are, in the divorce process, I often want to know where they are in that. Because if they've started it, then there's a guide of timelines. If they haven't started the divorce process, then we know we've got time. Because there's a 20-week period where people can't do anything. And I always let people know, you have time here. Do not rush this. Do not think we've got to, there's an urgency to make decisions. But then that's coupled with they want to make decisions quite quickly because they want to move on. And it's that balance that I think we can add.
But at least they're empowered to be able to take control, make their own decisions and go at their pace. And that's the beauty of it. You don't have that in court or in correspondence sometimes. It can really, just the momentum builds up, and that is scary.
Yeah.
So I suppose working with solicitors then, does it help you? Or does it hinder you? So I find clients like us to be a bit in the background to help.
I think it's important because I'm not legal. I don't give legal advice. I can give legal information. But I think that's helpful for me as a mediator to say, okay, you now need to go and speak with your solicitor about this. Some people don't always have solicitors. I mean, there is a cost element. Yeah. And I think sometimes people they don't have the luxury of having a solicitor. And that's reality. But I think where there is a solicitor involved, I think even to the point of having solicitors in the room in mediation, in a very collaborative way. Financial advisors, divorce coaches I've had in rooms, social workers we've had in the room, because collaboration, I think, is really important.
Keeps the focus, like you said earlier. It's about the focusing them.
And also it's having that conversation as a collective rather than, individuals going away and finding out information. Because if you've got different solicitors, you're going to get different information because that solicitor works for that individual. And I get that, that's important. But to be collaborative can remove some of that and really help us move forward in a way that supports those people to get to where they want to be. And ultimately, that's really what we're trying to do.
Well, yes, and that must have a huge impact, a good impact on the children, knowing that they know that the parents are working together and are amicable.
Well, we've just had a brief conversation about good divorce. Good divorce is if children are. I absolutely believe children can survive their parents to separate. It's how that's managed that's key. Yeah. People separate all the time. Divorce rate is high, and I'm not suggesting it's easy, and I'm not minimising that. But if there are children involved, we have to then almost approach divorce from a child's perspective. Yes. Because they just want, healthy, happy relationships. That can happen when we separate. And I often speak to people about, my view, and it may not be agreeable with everyone. It's always a family unit. It just looks different. Yes, mum and dad are still mum and dad, or parent and parent. They're still parents. They're still children, and it's gonna be a different shape. But children need to know that they are able to move, quite freely and happily between homes. And that can happen. And I think for me the key is that communication. Communication is absolutely key. And I think that's one of the strengths of mediation or working with your solicitor is when we are left what I call the kitchen table discussions, we lead with emotion because we're human and we're all emotional. And when we get divorced, it's one of the most emotional transitions that we have. When we then put someone else in that conversation, we can add a little bit of structure and calm and direction. We don't eradicate the emotion, but we can help control that. That's where good communication can start to take place. And that's, I think, one of the aspects of a good divorce or a better divorce.
And the children can communicate as well, can't they? They can be included in the mediation.
Yeah, so child-inclusive mediation. And actually that's one of the reasons I trained to be a mediator, being an advocate for children. I've always worked in jobs where children have been the centre focus of all the work that I've done. So child-inclusive mediation is really important. If you go to court, CAFCAS get involved regardless, and they'll encourage you to speak to children. In mediation, we do it in a way separate from parents. It's not in the same room as parents, and obviously there's a safeguarding and kind of process to make sure we're doing it correctly and we're doing it for the right reasons. That's key to me. I do not want to bring children into the conversation if it's not going to help. So also I need to know that parents are going to listen to what children say.
That's going to be easier said than done, though, isn't it?
Yeah, because sometimes it's hard for parents to hear what children say.
Yeah, they're very honest.
Well, we know children tell us the truth most of the time, and that's not always easy. And it puts us in the focus of maybe having to change what we're doing. But yeah, child inclusive mediation there's a process to it. So we have to be in mediation. So I have to be mediating with both parents. If we feel there is an option for child inclusive mediation, we'll talk about it. The parents then have to agree that I can contact the child or children. Okay. I then contact the children in a way that we've agreed, whether that's a text or a WhatsApp message or a letter. I love sending letters. We very rarely get those these days. Depends on the age of the child, so that can be creative. And then the child has to agree that that's what they want to do, and we can do that in the office. I do it online. Wouldn't do it in homes. I think it needs to be a neutral space. I walked around the park in the summer with an 11-year-old. We had a chat. So, there's a space to be creative with that, and child-led, child-focused.
And would you speak, if there were siblings, would you speak to them all together or individually?
If they agreed. I think sometimes it's nice to try and do both. So sometimes if there's more than one, you may see them as a collective, but then I think it's important to give them space on their own. Yeah. Because children have different views from their siblings. And it's important to honour that for them and give them that space to talk through.
And it might be the first time they've actually had a voice.
Yeah.
Because most of the time they don't even know what's happening. No. Parents have decided and they're just having to go along with it.
And one of the things I say a lot is if parents don't know, children don't know. And if children don't know, they make it up in the head.
But that's the wrong thing to do, isn't it? That can be really bad.
It is, because it's scary. But also when we separate and there's children involved, often a lot of the conversation is about children. And if children overhear that, they have blame and guilt attached to that. Even though it's not their fault. No. If they're overhearing conversations of where they're going to be, they internalise that. And I get that, because those conversations are important. But if parents don't know, children don't know. And I say that a lot, even, we've got Christmas coming up. Yeah. If you don't know your child arrangements for Christmas, then the children don't know. That can feel, there's a whole load of feelings that can be attached to that, isn't
Well,
there?
especially given the children's ages in particular, if they're still believing in Santa, they're going to be thinking 2 homes.
Absolutely.
Where's Santa going to go? Little things like that can be a huge problem for a child.
Who leaves the carrot out? I mean, that's key information. We still do that. So, I think children's voices are so important. Yeah. And one of the things that I think is really important to say about child inclusive mediation is it's confidential. Yes. And sometimes parents don't fully understand that because I will speak to children and those children decide what aspects of that conversation are shared with the parents. And I think that's key for a number of reasons. One, because it's their space to speak, to talk, to let some things out, and then we'll decide what aspects of that can be shared. And it's usually the bits around, what they want the parents to do or behave, how they would like to spend time with them, where they would want to live. And that's heavy.
And they're trusting you with that. They want it to be respected.
Yes, and that's why, going back to what I said earlier, is knowing how parents are going to receive that information is key. Because if I engage in that with a child and offer that space of trust, and then parents go, we're not doing that, which unfortunately happens. I'm sure you've experienced that. Yeah. That just doesn't sit with me. It's really hard because I'm then part of that, and I've tried to do something that's not worked. And I know there's no guarantees with that, because sometimes parents don't want to hear what the children are saying, but that's what that process is for. And I think it can be quite simple for children. Children want to be able to see both parents when they live separately. They want to have a relationship with them. They want both parents to be amicable and get on to the best. Simple.
Keep it that simple.
Yeah.
You miss the point.
And I know, they don't understand adult emotion, but actually, that's what they want.
Yeah.
They want it to be a little bit easier and just, know what's going on. I think that's an important thing. Children want to know what's happening.
I think that's the common thread, though, isn't it, through our discussion this morning, is communication with everybody.
Yeah.
Openly.
Yeah.
In an informal setting where you can have some control as a family. That's it.
Yeah. And make decisions about what shape that family will be after separation. And I use this language as a mediator. I think it's okay to not know what the future looks like. And it's okay to be frightened of that. Because let's face it, our children are the reason why we do most things in life.
Yeah.
So being creative, being in a space that support, where a mediator or a collaborative approach supports people to navigate those complex decisions and difficult, really difficult decisions, reach out and get the support. You can't. Some people do it on their own, which is great, brilliant.
Yeah.
But it's rare.
It is extremely rare.
Yeah.
I think after watching this, hopefully that's going to help people or friends that they may know just to think one call can really make all the difference in navigating a complex situation.
And I think with the MIAM and even calls to yourself, and I know you do the drop-in for legal, I think that's not a commitment. That's not it's a way of gathering information to see not that you've got to go that route, but knowing what that route offers. Yeah. And in mediation, I don't just talk about mediation, I talk about the courts, I talk about legal support, because people need information. They need to know these are the options, and this is where, this is all the things that are available to you, and find the size that fits. And I think that's really important, is have that conversation with a professional, and just, see how that kind of unfolds, really. I think that's really important.
That's really useful. Thank you so much, Sue, for that.
You're very welcome.
That's been extremely helpful.